Yeah, hey, this is Bill Jelen from Mr. Excel. We'll be getting started here in about 1 minute. So just hang on. We'll get ready to start. All right, yeah, let's dive in here. I want to thank everyone for signing in today, or if you're watching the recording here. Today's webinar, Modern Excel Webinar, quickly discover patterns and trends in your data using Excel pivot tables. I'm Bill Jelen from MrExcel.com. I love talking about pivot tables. I've written a lot of books on pivot tables along with Mike Alexander, the pivot table data crunching series. And whether you've never created a pivot table before or you're a pivot table pro, I'm hoping you'll pick up some tricks in this 1 hour session. I want to thank Microsoft for hosting this once a month. They're putting on an Excel seminar with a different MVP. I know that Liam Bastic will be there next month, so check that one out. And Chandu last month, so there's recordings out there. All right, so I'm going to start off in the first half here talking about traditional pivot cache pivot tables. Just insert pivot table. Not checking the box for add that data to the data model. And in this first demo, I'm going to do Pivot Table 101, how to create your first pivot table and rearrange that pivot table. And then some cool tricks with year-over-year pivot tables, how to group daily dates up to months and years. But then there's a problem, a bug. I don't know if it's a bug. They would say it's a feature with Get Pivot Data, and a way to avoid that. First, by turning off Get Pivot Data, or a solution with percentage change from previous year. Then a top 10 report, which also has another thing that annoys me. I suppose it's right to some people, and a way around to solve that. So, I'm going to show you some of the gotchas, let's say, the things that can be a problem with pivot tables, and then how to solve those. We'll take a look at show report filter pages, and then using slicers instead of the filters. All right, so let's just jump over to Excel here, and we'll start to dive in. So the data set I'm going to use in this first half is this data with region, product, date, sector, which is like industry, customer, and then quantity, revenue, cost of goods sold, which is abbreviated there as COGS or COGS, and then profit. And this is a tiny data set. It only has 563 rows of data plus the heading, so 564 there at the bottom. But these concepts would work whether we had 500 rows or 500,000 rows. All right, so we have a nice clean data set here, one row of headings at the top, no blank rows, no blank columns. Those are really important that you have headings above everything. I had a manager once who would create headings like this. You take that word profit and put it on 2 rows like that, and that is a problem. Excel won't know how to deal with that. So you want to keep that heading in a single row, and if you really need it to look like it's on 2 rows, my favorite trick here is to press Alt and then Enter. Goes to a new line in that cell. All right, so Alt Enter. It's like turning on wrap text, but it allows you to control where the words wrap. So that's a cool little trick there. And then the other thing you have to watch out for. This was another manager I had. This guy drove us crazy. He would insert tiny little columns between the columns and make them real narrow like that. And you do that between every single column. And the reason he was doing it was all because of this crazy reason that he didn't like how Excel underlined things. See, when I underline date, it only underlines just the characters that are there. And he wanted it to underline across the whole column, right? So he was using the bottom border instead of the underline. But of course, if you put a bottom border here on all of these cells, it becomes just a single long line. And that's not what he wanted. He wanted individual little underlines. So he would add those extra columns in so that way his bottom borders would look right, which is just a really dangerous thing to do because someone's going to sort part of this data and not all of this data, right? So now, I don't work for that guy anymore, but heck, you might be working for him, or if you ever end up working for him, or someone else who likes to do that, check out this amazing feature in Excel. I love all of the crazy, obscure features in Excel. If I choose those headings and then come down here to an accounting style, Now you would think that that's going to change the underlines, it's going to change the dollar signs, currency, and the parentheses and things like that. But it also does an amazing thing here with our heading. So I changed to accounting style and then turn on the underline. See, it's a completely different underline. It doesn't just underline DATE. It underlines 90% of the cell like that, right? So if you're always trying to get to just a solid block of data, and if you have blank columns because your manager's trying to create those underscores, an accounting underline is the great way to go. All right, so here's our data, and I want to create a pivot table from this. My manager came to me and said, hey, I need to see total revenue by, let's say, region and product. Regions down the side, product across the top, and revenue. And before pivot tables, this would have been a 15-minute process with advanced filter, unique, and a transpose, another advanced filter, and then a dsum function and a data table too. It was hard. But now it's all down to 6 clicks. First click is click on the Insert tab. Second click here, go to Pivot Table. And I'll point out, if you actually, for this pivot table, if I want to recommend a pivot tables, I could get there 2 clicks shorter. But since I know what I want, I'm going to go with Pivot Table. And it detects the edge of the data, A1 to I564. So because I have no blank rows and blank columns, I figured it out. And then it offers to go to a new worksheet. And I'll have to tell you, a lot of times, I'll create the pivot table right out here. I'll leave one blank column and put it in maybe K2 or something like that. But today, we'll let it go to a new worksheet. Click OK. And here we are, right? This big, intimidating blank report here. The pivot table is going to go over here on the left-hand side, but let's take a look over here on the right-hand side for a minute. The pivot table fields pane, and it has a list of all the fields in the original data set, a little checkbox next to each. And then down here at the bottom, this is how we build the report. We take fields from the top and we drag it down here to the bottom. 4 drop zones that we're going to use today. Columns, which stands for the things that go across the top of your report. And be aware of that icon. That icon is actually the wrong icon. That icon belongs down here next to rows, and this icon here belongs next to columns. That got reversed somewhere after Excel 2003 and never been fixed since then. Rows. This stands for the fields you want down the left-hand side of your report. And again, that's the icon that should go there. And then values is the things we want to add up. All right, so all I have to do is I check mark region, and it flies down here to the rows field like that. Check mark revenue. And for those of you who are counting, I'm 5 clicks in. Insert, pivot table, OK. Check mark region, check mark revenue. And there's my report. Now, I want to have product going across the top. So I'm not going to just check mark this because it would become an inner row field here. Instead, I'm going to take the product field and drag it and drop it in the columns area like that. Now, hey, someone sent in a great question just before the webinar started. And they said, why won't pivot tables ever remember the number formatting? Now, in my case, the underlying data wasn't formatted, but even if it had been, it doesn't know the number formatting because when we created the pivot table, they actually take the data off of that sheet and load it into memory. So in memory, there is no formatting. So this, I don't think will ever get fixed. We have to right click and number format and then choose either currency. I just want to get thousand separators in. So I don't need currency, thousand separator, 0 decimal places. And yeah, we're going to have to do that every single time we create a pivot table for the rest of our lives. I don't think they'll ever add that functionality in. All right, so we print this out, give it to our manager, and our manager says, no, that's not what I want. Go redo it. Put products down the side and region across the top. Now, if your manager, like my manager, doesn't understand how to do pivot tables, it's very simple, right? You just look at the manager sincerely and say, all right, I'll be back in 15 minutes. And then you head back to your desk, and it's 3 really, really simple steps. First step, I'm going to take the product field here from the columns area and drag it and drop it in the rows area like that. Then, second step, I'm going to take the region field from the rows area and drag it and drop it in the columns area like that. And then this third step, I'm going to do something else for 14 minutes to make it look like it was actually hard. All right, so there we are. There's our first pivot table. No advanced filters, no dsum formulas, no what if analysis, data table 2. It's all just a matter of dragging and dropping fields around the report. An amazing, amazing way to go. All right, I'm going to take the product field out here. I'll uncheck this and replace it with the customer field. So you can see we have customers down the left-hand side. A beautiful thing about pivot tables is when your manager comes to you and says, wait a second, this can't be right. Where did that number come from? All right, there's no way that this customer bought 219,000 in the East region. Where'd you get that? Well, with a pivot table, that question, where'd you get that, is super easy. Just go to that cell and double click right now you'll notice down here in the lower left-hand corner, I'm on sheet 4. When I double click on this cell, they insert a new sheet to the left of sheet 4 that makes up all of the East region non-publishers, and there is the 219,115, right? And you can do that all day. Where did this number come from? Double click here and you get a report. Now, let's say there was actually a miscoding here. This shouldn't be West region, it should be East region. Well, you want to go back into your original data and change it here. Don't change it on the drill down report. That's not going to do you any good. All right, so it's a great way to identify problems, but you need to be aware that if you are going to make changes, go back into the original data. And, oh, by the way, if something changes here, it's not going to automatically refresh into the pivot table. All right, so right now, let's take a look. We are at $6.7 million, $6.7 million. And I'll come here and I'll just go to this first cell and I'll add in $1 million. And come back to the pivot table, seeing it's still 6.7 million. To capture that underlying change, come here to the pivot table analyze tab. We have 2 tabs active when a pivot table is there. And right here, this refresh button will cause, actually I added 10 million in, will cause that new data to be picked up. All right, so let's go back and get this back to the original data and then refresh here. So just a couple of simple little things you have to be aware of, that if the underlying data changes, you're going to have to change the pivot table. All right, so the next example I wanted to go through here with traditional pivot tables is creating a year-over-year report, And in this particular data set, I have 2 years worth of data. I choose dates here down the left-hand side. Oh, look at that. They automatically grouped the data for me. And this is an option, right? So if we go into File, Options, this started happening in Excel 2016. Here on the Data tab of Excel Options, you can disable automatic grouping of date, time columns in pivot tables. And I'll be honest with you, while I appreciate this because it teaches people how to group data, I don't particularly like the rules that they use. It has to be a full year to get the year in there. Like, let's say that you are closed on New Year's Day, right? And so you only build on January 2nd and you're closed on New Year's Eve through December 30th. Well, sometimes they won't group that up to years. So I tend to not allow them to do that. I'll turn that off and then we'll just get daily days like this. And then I can choose, right? So I prefer to choose how it's going to roll the data up. All right. So build a simple little pivot table there, dates down the left-hand side. In this particular data set, it's about 450 rows because we build on every weekday, except for holidays. And so I want to roll this data up to months and years. I go to Group Field right here on the pivot table Analyze, and you have to be on either the date heading or the first date field. Choose Group Field and check this out: seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, quarters, or years. This always cracks me up. I always worked for a manufacturer where we're billing, daily and shipping daily, and I can't imagine anyone who has data where they're rolling it up to minutes or rolling it up to hours. But I suppose if you're a cell phone company, you might be doing that. So I'm going to roll this up to months and years, or maybe you choose quarters and years. Whatever works for you in this particular case. So I'm going to choose months and years and click OK. And what's awesome about this is they create a brand new field. So the date field now becomes months, and there's a new virtual field over here in the pivot table field list called years. Boy, and I really appreciate that they made this be a separate field, because what can I do? I can take that years field and pivot it to go across like that. All right, so now I have months down the left-hand side and then years going across. So for every item now, I can see, each month what we did last year and what we did this year. And at this point, I can now take the date out and put sector there and see whether we're up or down each year, or put customer in and see whether we're up or down. So it's super, super flexible. Let's go back to dates though. Now, what I'd really like to see in column D is I want to see a change, percentage change. Are we up? Are we down? All right. The grand total doesn't mean that much. I just need to know, for each month, are we up or are we down? So right here, I'm going to right click and remove grand total. And there's 2 different ways to do this. And I'm going to do the way that I do. All right. Which is dangerous. And you'll see why it's dangerous. I'm going to come outside of the pivot table and build a calculation out here, just a regular old formula that's going to show the percentage change. So that's C5 divided by B5 minus 1. Looks like we're up maybe 5% or so here. So equal sign C5 divided by B5 minus 1. And take a look at this formula. I mean, I used the mouse or the arrow keys to build that formula, and instead of C5, they put this stuff in, get pivot data. What is this? This started happening to us back in Excel 2002, 17 years ago, with no explanation, right? People were freaking out back then, like, what is this? And the problem is that calculation is right? That's the right number. But when I double click to copy this down, it is January all the way down. It creates a formula that you can't copy. Now, 99.9% of the time, if someone's talking about get pivot data, their question is, make it stop. I don't like this, make it go away. Later, I'll show you how we'll actually use that. But there's two ways to make it go away. The first way, just type your formula. Don't use the mouse, don't use the arrow keys. C5 divided by B5 minus 1. That creates the exact same answer, see, but when I copy it down, it works, right? We're getting February, March, April, May. Now, if you're in the camp who hates get pivot data and you just never want it to happen to you again, make sure to go back into the pivot table. So we have the pivot table tools up here in the ribbon. Over here on the left-hand side is an options button, and I don't want you to click the options button. Instead, I want you to go into this little drop down here and uncheck generate get pivot data. You turn that off once, and it'll be off forever. It will never happen to you again, right? So if you like to build your formulas outside the pivot table, that is a great way to go. All right, now there is another way to do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the revenue field and drag it down here a second time. So now we have sum of revenue and sum of revenue 2. And I'll rearrange this, putting the values ahead of the years, right? So I just dragged that order. So now we have 2018, 2019. For this sum of revenue 2, though, I want to change how that calculation happens. So back here on the Analyze tab, I go into Field Settings, and this is where we have, the classic calculation, sum, count, average. Wrong spot. Field Settings, or sum, count, average, max, min. But here I'm going to go to Show Values As, and say I want to show it as a percentage change from, percentage difference from, and it's going to be the year field, and then previous item. All right, this is really deep how this is hidden here. I'll change this to percentage change. All right, so we're going to do percentage difference from years field based on the previous item. And what that's going to do is this 2019 column is going to show us whether we're up or down from the previous year. Now, the one hassle here is the 2018 is blank because you see we have no 2017 data. But it's simple just to hide that column. All right, and now it looks like your pivot table has 2018, 2019, and then the percentage change from the previous year. Cool way to solve that problem. All right, there you are. So that's my second tip: year-over-year pivot tables. The problem with get pivot data and a solution on percentage change from previous. Let me show you another trick that I love to do here, and this is one that I used to create all the time. I'll ungroup these dates and take dates out. I'll put customer down the left-hand side, and I'm actually going to take the revenue field. Right now we have sum of revenue. By the way, that word sum of revenue, you don't have to stick with that, right? It sounds like a little bit of math professor wrote that kind of thing. You can just come here and type anything you want, like total revenue. You're fine. You're allowed to change that heading, and they have no problem with that. Although the one thing you can't type there is the one thing that sometimes you want to type, which is just revenue. If you try and type revenue there, they'll say, oh no, we already have a field called revenue. You can't use revenue again. So call it sales, or even better, call it revenue space. Revenue space, they have no problem with that. All right, now I'm going to take the revenue field down here and drag it in a second time and a third time. Oh, a fourth time. See, column D is still hidden. I'll unhide that. All right, so now I have 4 different versions of revenue. They all have the same numbers. Why would I do that? Because I can change the calculation in each. A fast way to get to field settings is to double click on this heading right here. So rather than going back to pivot table analyze and then clicking field settings, just double click on sum of revenue. Sum, count, average, max, min. I have to tell you, I never use these. The good ones are on the second tab. And this one I want to show as a percentage of the column total. So here, sum of revenue is going to say percentage of total. Click OK. All right, so now for each item, we see what the percentage of the total is. For the third one, I'll come over here, and I love this. They added this in Excel 2010, something called rank largest to smallest. So our largest customer will be ranked number 1. If we scroll down here, Worldwide importers, number one customer at 12.96%. And call that rank. See, if you forget to type the heading inside the field settings, you can just type a new heading here. And then for this one, now it doesn't make as much sense in this case, but imagine if you had years or months or quarters down the left-hand side. Beautiful setting that's called an accumulated total. So it's a running total like that. So we'll call that accumulated revenue and click OK. Right. And see, that will accumulate down to the $6.7 million, right? So all kinds of different calculations we can do. Now, in my fake data set here, you might recognize this as the customers in Contoso. It's just 27 customers, right? So it all fits on one page. But in real life, when I was really creating this report, well, we had 800 customers a month, right? It'd be 20 pages. And you can't give that to your vice president of sales. His eyes are just going to glaze over. All right. So we said, all right, what we want to do is we want to show a report of just the top 10, just enough for a half a page of data. All right. But I want to call attention here to two numbers, $6.7 million, and our largest customer is 12.96%. 6.7 million and 12.96%. Those numbers are going to come into play here when I use this next feature in Excel. I go into the customer drop down here and go to value filters and say top 10. All right. Although it's called top 10, this is so flexible. It could be top or bottom. It doesn't have to be 10. It could be 20 or 5 or 12. It doesn't have to be any special number, anything you want. And you can even say, give me enough to get me 80%, or give me enough records to get me to $5 million or $3 million. So I'm going to ask for the top 5 items based on revenue. Click OK. And there they are. Our top customers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's beautiful. But here's the problem. Do you remember worldwide importers was previously 12.96%? Well, now it says they're 24%. And the problem is that's 24% of this smaller number. This says grand total, but it's just the total of the things we can see. All right. I really want that to say 6.7 million, and I really want that to say 12.96%. Now, back here on the design tab, there's a solution, but not really. So underneath subtotals, the 4th item says include filtered items and totals. This is grayed out. Every day I come into work, I start Excel. First thing I do is I come here and check to see if this got turned back on. I'm waiting for this to turn this back on. This got grayed out. I remember the exact day. It was January 30th, 2007. Most people remember the day their kid was born. I remember the day that this feature that would have saved me so much trouble got grayed out in Excel. I don't know why I keep checking. It's been 12 years and 9 months now at this point. It's probably never going to get turned back on, right? If that would get turned back on, this grand total would say $6.7 million. That number would be back to the original amount, and life would be great. Now, look, I wouldn't have brought this up if I didn't have an awesome solution to this. And I was doing one of my live Excel seminars. I travel around the country doing these seminars. I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A nice fellow there named Dan was in the seminar, and I was complaining about this. He's like, hey, Bill, there's a solution to this. And that's why I love doing the live seminars, because every time I do a seminar, someone in that room knows some Excel trick I've never seen before, right? So I go there, I do seminars, everyone gets a book, but I always leave the seminar with a couple of new tricks every single time. And this day that I met Dan, Dan had an awesome trick for this. He's like, you're using the wrong filter. You don't want to use the filters in the pivot table tools. You want to go back to the data tab and use this filter here. And you'll see that filter is grayed out too. All right. But here's the thing. There's several different ways that people use this filter. I'm just going to go back to the original data. If I had to filter this data set, I would just choose one cell and click filter, or choose one cell and use the auto filter that I have up here in the quick access toolbar. Other people do Control-Shift-L. Some people do Control-T. Some people select the whole data set. But Dan had discovered a 6th way. What Dan does is he says, look at all of the headings, go to the very last heading cell, go one cell to the right of that. So in this case, J1. And he didn't call it this, but I've started calling this the magic cell. For some weird reason, from the magic cell, I can click the filter icon and it filters the adjacent data. See, and it doesn't filter J1. It's a really weird trick. I don't know why anyone would ever want to do that unless you want to filter a pivot table. See, because when you click outside of the pivot table out here into the nothingness, the filter icon is available to you. All right, so what we have to do is click in the magic cell. And they forget to gray out the filter. So right now I'm about to add filter drop downs to these 3 cells here, even though it's completely illegal against all the rules, right? And then when I use this filter dropdown, I'm using the old auto filter. I'm going to go into number filters, top 10, and I'm going to ask for, to get the top 5, I'm going to ask for the top 6. Why the top 6? Because to that filter, the grand total is the largest row, right? So that gives me the grand total and then the top 5 customers. I'm back to 12.96% of $6.7 million. It's a beautiful trick. All right, I'm really happy that I met Dan from Philadelphia that day, and he taught me about the magic cell. Just a great way to achieve something that generally would be impossible. All right, now, hey, look, we're about finishing up here on our regular pivot tables. We need to move on to the new pivot tables, but let me just show you 2 cool things here. We haven't talked about this filters icon at all. I'll drag the sector field down there. And this would allow you to create a report, let's say, of just manufacturing or something like that. So there's all the manufacturing customers. And in Excel 2007, they gave us the ability to select multiple items. So I could choose manufacturing and services. All right, but what I really don't like about that is this word multiple items. Like, what multiple items? You know, if you print this out, no one's going to know what this means. And I kind of had a discussion with the guy in the Excel team who created this. I said, you know, why don't you put both items there? He's like, well, it's not going to fit. I'm like, well, it would fit if you used the shrink to fit. Right here under alignment, there's a setting called shrink to fit. He's like, well, yeah, but that's if you choose 2. What if you choose 10? I said, well, then you won't be able to read it. You know, it'll be 1-point font. But like right now, it's not useful any of the time. All right, now I'll clear this filter, go back to all. The beautiful thing in Excel 2010, this was great. And actually, it made me stop using this filter up here. In Excel 2010, they gave us an awesome new thing called a slicer. All right, so with slicers, I can choose sector and product like that. All right, and they put them right in the center of the screen. You can always rearrange these. As a product, I'm going to make it be really small by making it be 3 columns. And I'll be able to shrink that down. And then sector, let's see, sector, let's go with 2 columns there. A little bit wider. All right, so everything fits on one screen. On a touch screen, this would just be amazing, right? So if I would choose manufacturing, you see the customers in manufacturing. Right? Choose publishing, those are the customers in publishing. If I need to choose 2, well, it's going to look right, manufacturing and services. So now when you print this, the slicer prints, and you'll be able to see what's selected in the slicer. So just a great improvement there. The slicers, I love those, especially, wow, if you had a touch screen, you know, you can build a whole bunch of pivot tables that all rely on those slicers like that. All right, one last trick here before we leave. Great trick from my friend Sylvia in Santa Monica, California. Showed up in my seminar one time and said, oh, yeah, hey, this report is fine. But what I need you to do is I need you to make a report for every single sector, right? I said, oh, yeah, let me write a macro for that. She's like, nope, no macros. Yeah, I don't know. What are you talking about? She says, I knew it. She had a copy of my book, Pivot Table Data Crunching, the first edition, all the way back from 2004, 2005. And she's like, I read your whole book and you don't talk about this feature. I'm like, all right, Sylvia, I learned something new in every single seminar. This obviously is going to be it. She says, all right, go to the options drop down, not the options button itself, and go to show report filter pages, and then say show all pages of sector. That's the only thing up in our filter area. And when I click OK, look at that. They just inserted 7 new sheets in the workbook. So there on the first sheet is financial, and then healthcare, and then manufacturing and publishing. Now in this case, it just inserted 7 sectors. That's nothing really amazing. But imagine if, you know, it was 10 customers or 50 customers or 27 product lines, being able to replicate a pivot table like that using show report filter pages. What an awesome trick there from Sylvia in Santa Monica. And oh, by the way, here, let me just let me show you one more cool thing, and then we'll move on to the new pivot tables. I'm going to take sector and drag sector to be the first row area. So we have sector in column A and customer in column B. And I'm bragging that my pivot table looks so awesome. Your pivot table, most likely starting in Excel 2007, had this compact form, shown compact form, which is great. Maybe if you're doing a presentation, but if you're actually going to reuse this data, compact form is not the best thing in the whole world. And I will brag that I'm the person that went to the Excel team right after this came out. I said, hey, some people who are going to reuse this data don't like this view, and we really need to give them a way. You, the Excel team, really ought to give them a way to have a checkbox that say all future pivot tables start in tabular form. And it took years. It was about 6 years of me asking and asking and asking and asking. Every year at the MVP Summit, I say, hey, can we do this? This shouldn't be that hard. And finally, it's funny, they wouldn't necessarily listen to me, but they sent me out here to this website called excel.uservoice.com. And they said, write up your idea and see if anyone else votes for it. All right, so sure enough, down here, allow people to set or choose defaults for pivot tables, 560 votes. But it didn't take that many votes. Somewhere around 200 or 300, they called and said, all right, yeah, we're going to do it, but we're not going to do it the way you want to do it. We think it should be broader than that. So if you're in Office 365 or Excel 2019, go to File, Options, look for this new category called Data. This button right here, Edit Default Layout. So I'm able to say all future pivot tables start in tabular form. Always check the box for repeat all item labels. And I love how much better they made it than what I asked for. Pivot table options for empty cells. Right here, I just uncheck that so that way I get zeros instead of empty cells. If you love classic pivot table layout back here on display, you can make all future pivot tables start in classic pivot table layout. All right, change your favorite settings here, click OK, and then when you create a pivot table, no more compact form if you would rather have it in tabular form like that. All right, so I love how the Excel team just does a great job of listening to people on a user voice and making those changes when there's a large cry for it. In fact, if you have anything that's driving you crazy in Excel, go out to excel.uservoice.com, write it up. It helps to be a little bit funny or sarcastic so that way other people will see your idea and laugh maybe and vote for that idea. All right, we're going to start to talk about this box, tiny little box in Excel 2013 that debuted in the Insert Pivot Table dialog box. It's a sentence that says, add this data to the data model. Right? Not a lot of explanation down there about what it does. No huge red neon arrow saying check this. It will add superpowers to your pivot table, but that's what it does. Superpowers to your pivot table. All right. So we're going to talk about a few different examples here, matching up data from different sheets, how to do a count distinct in a pivot table, how to really do a true top 10 report without using that hack from Dan in Philadelphia, and then creating new formulas, calculations that are impossible in regular pivot tables like medians or text, one set of slicers for two different data sets, and even a pivot table on a map. All right, so lots to demo here. Let's switch back to Excel, and we'll go to a file that I called Eliminate VLOOKUP with the data model. Now, I love VLOOKUP, and even better than that, the new XLOOKUP that's coming out soon. But there's a lot of people that can't do a VLOOKUP. So here I have 2 sheets worth of data. The green data on the left is on sheet 1. This blue data really belongs on sheet 2. I just put it here so we can see it side by side. The green data, hundreds of rows of invoice data with a customer field. And then over here, a little lookup table for customer and sector. And my manager wants me to merge these two. He wants to see total revenue by sector, total revenue by sector. Well, VLOOKUP, yeah, but think about it. If you really had 200,000 rows of data and you had to put 3 or 4 columns in, doing VLOOKUP is going to be so slow. So what we do is we take both of these data sets, format as table. So Control T or Home, format as table. Now, when you do that on table design, they call this one table 1 and this one table 2, but you can rename that, right? My name is called data and sectors. I'm not sure that's any better than table 1 or table 2, but at least it's descriptive. Starting in Excel 2016, on the data tab, we have this new icon here called relationships. Back in Excel 2013, you didn't have the relationships icon, but you could create the relationship after the fact. I definitely like doing it ahead of time. I'll create a new relationship here, and we just tell it we have a table called data. It has a field called customer. The related table is sectors, and it has a field called customer. And click OK. Right now we've told Excel how those two tables should be joined. It's like doing a join and access or SQL Server. It's faster than a VLOOKUP. All right, so now I've created those 2 data sets, and we'll come here, insert, pivot table, and choose that box. Add this data to the data model right down there. That box. You might not have even noticed it there. I would say this sentence is such an undersell, right? It's such a boring sentence for all the things that it unlocks. All right, choose OK. All right, and one little subtle difference here, above the field names, I have the table name, data. And even more subtle, at the top is another tab called all. And all will now give me all of the fields or all of the tables on all of the sheets. So if I want to see sector and then revenue, check that out. Look what just happened. It took the data from sheet 1 and the data from sheet 2 in memory. It merged those and gave me my report. Now, I'm going to right click here in number format. Still have to come in and say currency with 0 decimal places, right? There's no good solution to that. Even with the pivot table defaults, you can't say that we're always going to start in currency. All right, so it's just one of those things. All right, beautiful. Joining 2 data sets, and you can join multiple data sets. All right, as long as it's a one-to-many relationship, like any lookup table would be. And I tell you what, if you go to Ignite this year and you talk to any of the Power BI people or the Power Pivot people, the data platform people, they'll talk about merging this data all day. But for me, as an Excel guy who's just living in Excel with simple little data sets all the time, I love the other powerful things that I get from checking that box of add this data to the data model. So I'm going to come back here to just a real boring data set, 563 rows, no lookup tables at all, nothing spectacular. Why would I ever run this through the data model? Oh, well, because it unlocks all kinds of features. So I'm going to insert a pivot table, add this data to the data model. Not even going to make it into a table, right? I don't have anything to join. They're going to create, a fake table name called range. That's fine. I have no problem with that. All right, and I'm going to build a report here with sector down the left-hand side, and then customer. And I just want to do this to show you that we have 2 customers in finance, 2 in healthcare, and 3 in manufacturing. 2, 2, and 3. You can remember that, right? 2, 2, and 3. And my manager wants to know how many customers there are in each of those sectors. So I take the customer field and I drag it over here to values like that. And it says it's giving me a count of customer, but it's not. It's telling me how many orders there were. It wasn't 2, 2, and 3. It's 44, 96, and 44. Completely the wrong answer. Now, in a regular pivot table, I would double click here and I could change it from a count to a sum to a max to a min. But because I checked that box for add this data to the data model, there is at the bottom a secret choice that's not in regular pivot tables called a distinct count. Choose OK. And now 2, 2, and 3. It's actually the right number out there. So if you need to count the number of unique items or distinct items in each sector or in anything, changing to a distinct count. And the only way to get to distinct count is to check the box for add that data to the data model. All right, we'll take customer out. And we'll go back to an example here that I showed in the traditional pivot table. So I'm going to cut customer down the left-hand side, revenue twice, build that same example trying to get the top 10 report. And the second one, I'll do show values as, and I'll say percentage of column total, like this. All right, so there's my report. You remember worldwide importers, 12.96% of the total, 12.96% of the total. All right, customer, top 10. And before when I did this, my totals changed. But now when I do it, my totals stay the same, $6.7 million. And that grand total has an asterisk next to it saying that asterisk means that the items that have been filtered out are still included in this total. And the reason that that asterisk showed up is because on the design tab, where this has been grayed out for 12 years, it's not grayed out anymore, right? So it's funny, if you would hover over this, when it was grayed out, they should pop up a tooltip saying, hey, would you like to use this? Just go back and recreate the pivot table, choosing the box that says, add this data to the data model. You'd be like, what? Why would that change it? But it changes it. All right. Now, the reason that this automatically showed up without me having to choose it is because in my pivot table defaults, file, options, data, edit default layout, right here, I said include filtered items and totals. I actually checked that box, hoping I could trick Excel into turning it on in regular pivot tables, but it only works when it is a data model pivot table. All right, so look at that. We took data from sheet 1 and sheet 2 and merged it, did a count distinct, created a top 10 report without having to resort to the magic cell. All right, now here's one more. Let's take that total field out, and I'd like to replace it with an average. Well, that's super easy to do. I just double click there and choose average. All right, but then my manager says, all right, now replace it with a median. A median? can't do medians. There is no choice for median here. If I come here and go to show values as or show summarize values by, there is no median in the list, right? Can't do it. Shoot, no, sorry, can't do that. I'm going to write some crazy formulas, and there's no median if formula. I don't know, sorry, can't do that. Oh, but we can, because the data model includes a whole new formula language where you can create new calculations in pivot tables that are impossible in regular pivot tables. So I want to create a median. If you have the data tab and this manage data model, well, that'll get you to it. Or if you don't, in Excel 2016, you just right click the table name and say add measure. Measure, that's a database term for a calculated field. It's funny, for one version of Excel, they called it a calculated field, and then the database people prevailed and said, no, it's a measure, make it go back. So I hate that, how the nomenclature there. When you see measure, just think calculated field. All right, so here's our new measure. I'll create a measure called median revenue. And the formula is going to be equal median, open paren, and they give me a list of all of my fields. I choose the revenue field like that. And check this out. When I'm creating a measure, I get to specify up front that it should be currency with 0 decimal places and what the currency symbol is. All right, so that's a nice improvement. Choose OK. And because I came in here by right-clicking range, it doesn't automatically add to the pivot table. I just have to check it. And we get median revenue, which is different, of course, than average. This is looking for the value right in the middle. And that's just one calculation out of thousands of calculations that we can do in a data model pivot table. Let's see, I'm going to switch over here and show a cool example. I was doing a seminar down in Melbourne, Florida. I've done seminars in Melbourne, Australia, but this one was from Melbourne, Florida. And the person said, look, I want to create a pivot table, but what I want to do is I want to show text in the pivot table. And, they said we have an original and a revised, and we want to show the difference between those. And you would think that that's something you couldn't do. All right. But if I create a pivot table, insert pivot table, add this data to the data model, and we'll put, let's say, sales rep down the side and the original versus revised, right? And what we're trying to do is trying to get a list of their choices, both before and after. All right, now one thing I ran into here, these can get large, right? Especially in the grand total. So we definitely want to right click and remove the grand total, and then right click and remove the grand total. And then we'll add a measure in here. Let's take a look at the other way to do this. On the data tab, click the manage data model. Oh, that's not where I wanted to go. Sorry, I never actually do it this way. I wanted to come here to the Power Pivot tab and say measures, new measure. And we're going to say all codes will be our measure name, and we'll do equal concatenate X. Concatenate X, and one is the values from the code field. And we want table 1 code. And then comma space between each one. That's our delimiter, actually our order by expression. 1, and then another delimiter right there. Yeah, delimiter, comma space. Now, did I have this one right? Check. No errors in formula. Big question will be what happens when we get the result. All right, so Andy originally chose guava and now chose date. Barb originally chose guava and now chose melon. This is crazy. It's giving us text in calculated text in the values area of a pivot table. Now I'm going to take put a new field in here like market, right? And so we'll put market before rep. That means here in the Atlanta total or the LAX total, it's actually concatenating the various values together. And let's see if we go with region first, take market out. All right, so here in the East region, the answer should be guava, fig, date, cherry. but they're smart enough to say, oh, fig's there twice, we're only going to put it in once, right? So this is super, super cool. Being able to create a measure that actually calculates text. And again, be really careful here that you don't put the grand totals in. This tiny data set wouldn't be a problem. But the bug is if the result of a formula is more than 32,767 characters, the pivot table just simply stops reacting. Like I showed this in one of my seminars, and then someone ran off and did it. And like, hey, this pivot table broke. We had to kind of do some archaeology to figure out what the underlying reason was between it. All right, one last example here of modern pivot tables. Slicers are great if all the data is coming from the same source. But what if you have data coming from two different sources? Like here I have last year's data and this year's data. And they share a store name in common. And I want the slicers from these two pivot tables, one slicer to control both pivot tables, but you can't because it's coming from two different places. Now, maybe I can merge this data using Power Query, and that's a story for another day. But right now, I want to try and get these slicers to work. So what I'm going to do is have a third table. The third table has each of the stores that are in either of the first two tables, maybe some extra fields out here. And on table design, you'll see that this is called last year. This is called this year, TY for this year, and then just something called stores. And when we go into data and then manage, beautiful thing here called the diagram view, and you'll see that this is the gray table on the far right-hand side. It sits in the middle and it talks to both the left table, last year table, and to the right table, this year table. The whole trick here is that if I build a slicer with store name, it's going to come from this center table, the table stores, not from the one on the right, because the one on the right can't see the one on the left, not from the one on the left, because it can't see the one on the right. The whole trick is to have this center table. All right, so we'll start here just from a completely brand new area. Insert pivot table. It knows to use this workbooks data model. It's going to go right to that cell. And first I'll build a last year report with store name and sales. And then over here, we'll put a new pivot table. So insert pivot table, use this workbooks data model. And this time from this year, so store name and sales. And now I want to have a slicer that controls both of those. So from pivot table analyze, insert slicer, and see they only offer me the tables that are in play. But if I go to all, I can find that table stores and say I want to do it by store name and by mall developer. Choose OK. All right, and because this data model has these sitting in the middle, if I ask for all of the Forest City stores, oh no, it's not working. Okay. All right. So here's what we do. We go to this slicer and go to the slicer tools and report connections and hook it up to all of the pivot tables that we have like that. There we are. So now we choose from the slicer and everything updates automatically. So the Promenade must be a new store we have this year that was not there last year. All right. And of course, we'd have to do that from the store name slicer as well. Just choose all of these. I have seen great forum posts out there where people are doing this with VBA and people keep saying, the VBA doesn't work. Well, using this extra table definitely makes it work. All right, here we are. So that's the modern pivot table. One awesome feature that came along all the way back in Excel 2013 is called the 3D map, and that is creating a pivot table, but it's a special kind of pivot table. Because it's a pivot table that we're going to put on a map. And this is a modern pivot table as well. So here I have 2 sheets worth of data. These are a bunch of houses, 2,400 houses in a neighborhood on sheet 1, and then 6,000 rows of data for each of those houses every time it was ever sold, going back to the beginning of time here. And I want to create a pivot table from these data sets and visualize that data on a map. So we come here and choose Insert 3D map. And this always takes a little bit of time, and you have to have an internet connection for this to work because they're going to geocode that data. All right, so what you're looking at here is all of the houses in 2 neighborhoods between Route 528 and Route 520. Here's our field list and the drop zones. The different colors here are different building developments, right? So the purple is one builder, the yellow is another builder. This light blue and dark blue, it's unfortunate they're next to each other. And then the height of the house is the last sale price, the height of the last sale. And, we have the XY location based on the street address. All right. So let's just go back here to the beginning of time for this data, which is 1961 is when this neighborhood started to get built. This is actually my neighborhood here in Florida. So right up there is Cape Canaveral, where they launch rockets. Those are all the rocket launch sites. And this area was built up in the 1960s when the Apollo engineers started to move into town. And so I'm going to click the scrubber down here and let this data animate over time. And because I know the data pretty well, I know where to look where these first houses are built, the first purple houses here and some of the green allotment by 1966, and just a few of the yellow houses and nothing up here yet. So I can watch this neighborhood get built over time, right, and really understand which neighborhoods are the oldest, which ones are the newest houses. And we're actually using this as we were trying to find a house to buy when we moved down here. And it's funny, Mrs. Excel spends all her time on Zillow. She loves Zillow, right? She, just loves finding houses. And she can recognize, depending on the neighborhood, who the builder was, like from the front. She says, oh, look, it has that window there. That's the master bedroom. And this is the one where you're going to have to knock down these walls, Bill. And I'm like, no, I'm not knocking down any walls because I'm really good at Excel. I can do pivot tables with my eyes closed, but I'm horrible with a hammer. All right, so I became very fascinated with this neighborhood right up here. You can see on the satellite picture today, there's houses there. But as of 1985, that hadn't been built. These houses have to be 20 years newer than those houses down there. So I discovered that these would be the good houses to go for until, watch as these get built over the next couple of years. And remember, the height of the column is the price of the house. Never mind. We'll come back down here to these charming houses from the 60s, and I'll hire someone to swing the hammer, right? So this is crazy. This is Excel, 3D map, taking Excel data, 6,000 rows of Excel data, and plotting it with color and location and height of the columns. Just an amazing way to analyze data, putting a pivot table on a map and animating it over time. All right, now look, we have about 8 minutes left. And on my traditional pivot table example, I talked about 99.9% of the time, people hate get pivot data and they want to turn it off. And so the big question is, why isn't there? Is there a use for get pivot data? And a friend of mine named Rob Colley, who used to be on the Excel team, we were having lunch one time and just having a great time discussing all kinds of things about Excel. And, it was beautiful. And then Rob says, he makes some statement about our internal customers will be really upset that get pivot data doesn't work in this new world. Or I'm like, well, wait a second. I said, Rob, everything that you and I have said today, I completely agree with, except for your statement that anyone would be upset about get pivot data. He says, oh yeah, hey Bill, you're right. Outside of Microsoft, get pivot data is not very popular, but I'm talking about the accountants inside of Microsoft. They love get pivot data. I'm like, what are you talking about? How can this be that someone loves get pivot data? All right, so here I have a report here, 150 stores in column A. For every store, I have a plan for January, and then after that, a plan for February, all the way through December. I have a plan for all 12 months. And then we start to get actuals, right? So as we're going through the year, like I now have actuals up through April, right? And my manager wants stores down the left-hand side, months going across the top. If I have the actuals, he wants to see it. So January, February, March, April, actuals. After that, just the plan. Well, guess what? You can't create this. Insert, pivot table, okay. Stores down the left-hand side, months across the top, type, and then sales. Stores down the left-hand side, months across the top. All right, so there's my report. There's the store name, January actual, January plan. This January total, this is actual plus plan. You never want that. That's not a thing. All right, so we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to field settings and say subtotals none. But my problem now is I can't get rid of the January plan without getting rid of all of the plans. So that means every month I create this pivot table, copy it, paste its values, and start deleting columns. But the accountants at Microsoft said, no. We're going to let this pivot table live there, and no one will ever see it, right? And what they did is they built what I call a shell report, this beautiful looking report. Look at that with blank rows and formatting. This doesn't look like a pivot table at all, does it? right? And what they do is they say, we're going to fill this report from the pivot table. So right here, this cell is a store called Baybrook, January actual. I'm going to click an equal sign here, and I haven't turned off get pivot data yet. I'm going to allow myself to be get pivot dated. I didn't know that was a verb, but I just made it into a verb. Baybrook, January actual. I click on that, and sure enough, they get pivot data me, right? But here's the difference. I'm actually going to use it, right? So take a look at this formula. I remember this day specifically. Up to this point in my life, I was always deleting get pivot data. For the first time, I had to go into Excel help and read and figure out what this does. And see, here's the problem. It says we're looking for a store, and what store are we looking for? We're looking for the one called Baybrook. That's as I copy this, it gives me Baybrook everywhere. But the accountants at Microsoft, smart group of people, right? They said, what we're going to do is instead of putting Baybrook in there, we're going to go click on the cell that says Baybrook. That way, when we copy this down, it will say Highland Village and then Willowbrook and then the Woodlands Mall. I need a single $sign there before the D. To parameterize the rest of this, I take January. I go click on January like this, and I'll press F4 twice to lock down the row, and then type actual. We will come here and click on actual, and again, press F4 2 times to lock down the row like that. All right, now that formula, I'm going to copy it and paste special formulas. So in paste special, Alt-ES, choose formulas because I have nice formatting set up here with currency on the first row, but not on the other rows. And then same thing here, I want to paste special formulas. Awesome trick here, not a pivot table trick, but just a great trick in Excel. F4, the F4 key does exactly what you just did. I just did Alt-ES, F, enter. F4 will do it again. And then right here, do it one more time, choose all these cells, press F4, and bam, it's beautiful. Now, the process becomes, we add more data to the bottom here. We refresh the pivot table. No one ever sees this pivot table except for us. And then here in the report, we have to change this word plan to actual. I have a little formula there to do that. So I changed to 531. When I press enter, you'll see these numbers change from plan to actual like that. It's beautiful. It's a report, a nice report that's actually using get pivot data to pull data from a pivot table. Now, of course, if someone adds a new store in, you're going to have to manually add that to the report. So you want to have a check cell down here to make sure this grand total matches the other grand total. But a cool way to go. All right. Deep breath there. All right. Now let's just do a quick recap of what we talked about. So we started out with traditional pivot tables, doing a year-over-year report, both with grouping dates, and then getting the get pivot data problem, or a second solution with percentage change from previous. Top 10, you can auto filter a pivot table from the magic cell, or you can hang on, that's it. That was the solution back then because we couldn't turn on include subtotals and totals. And then here, using the filter field or the slicers. Slicers are a much better way to filter, but if you have to replicate a pivot table, then the old filters will let you do that. And then moving on to add this data to the data model, mashing up data from 2 different data sets, count distinct, a true top 10 report because we can show the totals, the filtered items and the totals, medians or text, slicers for 2 different data sets, pivot table on a map, and then finally just closing with an example of when you might actually use get pivot data. There you are. All right, so a lot of pivot table information for you. Check out my YouTube channel on YouTube, MrExcel.com. There is a whole pivot table playlist there. Just go to the most recent video I have out there and type a comment, and I'll get an email there. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to help. Really, again, thanks to the Excel team at Microsoft for giving us this great opportunity for the MVPs to share their knowledge. Be sure to check next month, November 2019, when my good friend Liam Bastick, who is hilarious, by the way, smartest guy I know, and also the funniest guy I know. I can't wait to hear his webinar next month. Thanks so much for joining me. This is Bill Jelen from Mr. Excel. Thanks.